This is a part of text from Sher Khan and the Bethamangalam Man-Eater by Kenneth Anderson. We were looking at the remains of guard Gurappa, or what was left of him. The tiger would certainly not return to eat the little that remained. Why he had left it in the first place was unaccountable, but he would anyway give the red ants a wide berth. The sub-inspector ordered his underling to arrange for the removal of the remains. Then he wrote an unnecessary verbose statement which I was asked to sign as a witness. It was getting dark when we returned to the forest rest house at Ayur. The range officer offered me accommodation at his bungalow for the night, but the thought of the dry biscuits in my pocket made me decide to return to my camp at Sivanipalli and the corned meat that awaited me there. I had my torch, and after all, the tiger might not be a confirmed man-eater. So I started out to the dismay of the two officers who shouted a warning behind me that I might never reach Sivanipalli. The path wound downhill mostly between lantana, scrub, and scattered babul saplings, till as a lower level was reached, the trees became loftier and clumps of heavy bamboo grew in among them. The darkness became intense, through which the beam from my torch cut only a narrow pencil of light. Suddenly, a feeling of great uneasiness came over me, rather, a feeling of mortal fear. Why, I could not imagine. I had heard no sound, nor had I caught any audible cries of alarm from the deer and other creatures in the jungle to warn me of danger. Complete silence reigned on every side. There was only the soft crunch of my own rubber-soled boots on the ground and the occasional crack of a twig or crackle of a leaf as I trod upon it. I halted abruptly and spun around, fully expecting to see the tiger stalking me from the behind. But there was nothing to be seen, not even the glimmer of a firefly, and nothing to be heard, not even the chirping of a friendly cricket. Then I knew why I was so afraid. It was the idea of absolute loneliness. There was no living creature nearby to witness what happened to me. Nothing and nobody to help. And although I could not see him in the gloom or hear him in that absolute silence, I was as certain of the presence of the tiger there as I was of my own. I have found that at times of great peril in the jungle, the human reflexes act in one of two ways. The trumpeting scream of a charging rogue elephant or the guttural roar of an attacking tiger or panther sometimes galvanizes the victim into precipitate flight. Or else he is so paralyzed by fear that he is rooted to the spot and quite incapable of movement. It is rare, indeed, that the victim can think at all, much less think clearly of what he should, or rather could, do in the circumstance. There is no time for thinking. But in this case, there was no screaming elephant before me, nor a roaring tiger for that matter. Only silence, and the certain knowledge that the man-eater was there. And the reflex that came to me was to run, and run fast as I could, away from that dreadful spot. I had the greatest difficulty in restraining myself, for I knew that if I started to run, it would be just what the tiger would like me to do, for then he would attack. All tigers, including man-eaters, know that every other creature is afraid of them. They are accustomed to striking terror into the hearts and minds of their prey, and with that knowledge comes the greater confidence that enables them to hunt so successfully. I knew at that moment that the only thing that could save me from the tiger would be to act otherwise. He was lurking somewhere, watching and waiting for me. Perhaps he was behind, perhaps ahead, or maybe to one side or the other, waiting and watching for an opportunity to spring upon me. He would have done so long before, had it not been for my torch and the bright beam of light that was cutting through the darkness. This had worried him. If I wanted him to attack, all I had to do was extinguish the torch and start running. Then he would come. I thought quickly, and I kept on walking at a measured pace, flashing the torch behind me to both sides and then in front. The path was narrow, not more than 6 feet wide at the most. The track turned a corner, and ahead of me, the light revealed a rock standing to the left and about 100 yards away. It was a sloping rock and appeared to be about 6 to 8 feet high. I felt that I could run up and onto it without difficulty, provided I had a sufficiently long start. For I had an idea. Here was a suitable place at which to try to tempt the man-eater to show himself. As I turned the idea over in my mind, I continued to walk forward. Those 100 yards were far too long to risk a showdown. The speed of a charging tiger is something fantastic and has to be seen to be believed. But when the rock was 50 yards away, I decided to take the chance. Making certain my rifle was cocked and fixing the location of the rock clearly in my mind, I suddenly extinguished the torch and ran as fast and as hard as I could. The darkness when the torch went out was intense. I could not see a thing. That was why I had taken care to face the rock and fix its location before putting out the torch and starting to run. It took quite a few seconds for the tiger to gather his wits and realize that the victim had actually done what he had been waiting for. As I ran, I was just beginning to think that perhaps there was no tiger at all and that my nerves had made a fool of me, when there was a shattering roar from behind and the man-eater launched his attack. I heard the roar, but I could run no faster anyway. I was only a few feet ahead of the tiger when I reached the rock and ran up the slope. Then I whirled around, raised the rifle to my shoulder, and pressed the torch switch with my left thumb, all simultaneously. The man-eater had reached the base of the rock and was crouched for the spring that could carry him to the top when the rifle went off, almost at point-blank range. With the crash of the explosion, he somersaulted backwards while I worked the underlever of the .405 to place the second round in the breech. Then I pressed the trigger. Nothing happened. A moment later, with a loud snarl, the tiger leaped to its left and disappeared into the long grass that grew there. Working the underlever again, I ejected the cartridge that had misfired and fired the next round at the spot where the tiger had just vanished. I had been too frightened when I fired the first shot, but I distinctly remember hearing the echo of the second one reverberating against the slopes of the Gulati hill, which I could not see in the darkness, but which is within a mile of the rock I stood upon. The growling had ceased. Had my second bullet found its mark? Had the tiger collapsed from the effect of my first shot? Perhaps both had taken effect. Or had I missed entirely? Worse still, perhaps I had only wounded the brute. With the torch still shining upon the bushes where the tiger had vanished, I sat down on the rock to collect my scattered wits and control my breathing, mostly to try to think. Only then did I realize how narrow an escape I had had. Had the tiger been closer behind me, or to either side or ahead, he might have cut me off before I could reach the rock. Moreover, had the cartridge that had misfired been the one ahead in the magazine of my rifle, it would have failed at the crucial moment and the man-eater would certainly have completed his spring. When I grew a little calmer, I began to wonder what had happened to the man-eater. It seemed inconceivable that I could have missed him at point-blank range. Then I remembered I had been running fast and had rushed up the rock at the last moment. Fear, excitement, and exertion had made me breathe hard, and this had evidently caused me to press the trigger unconsciously, causing me to miss entirely or perhaps just wound the beast. It was impossible for me to follow up in that darkness. If I had missed him, he would have been scared away entirely. If he was wounded, it was very unlikely that the man-eater would resume the pursuit even if I continued on my way to Sivanipalli. So, after a few moments, I decided to return to Sivanipalli and return the next morning to take up the trail.